Hello, and welcome to another edition of Your Therapist Needs Therapy. I'm your host, Jeremy Schumacher, licensed marriage and family therapist. I might be your friendly neighborhood therapist if you're here in Wisconsin, where I'm at. This week, we have to deal with celebrities doing dumb things. Because, celebrities are kind of dumb. This episode is a lot harder for me than it should be because I don't think highly of celebrity culture. So I really have to check my own biases here to do this episode correctly, quote unquote, correctly, without just soapboxing about how nobody should be famous. Yeah. For those of you tuning in on the YouTube, hey, hi, welcome. You will notice I generally have a poster of The Wall. It's a body art behind me back here of various Pink Floyd albums. If you've listened to me talk for any length of time, it's probably come up that Pink Floyd is my favorite band. And that's really remained unchanged since I was like 16 years old. The rest of my top 5 fluctuates depending on what I'm listening to and what I've been into most recently, which isn't in how top 5s are supposed to work. But I do like to push back a little bit on like the idea that our favorite things are set by the time we're age 30. I know that neuroplasticity dips and we all age. Time is undefeated. So I'm aware of these things, but I do try and keep an open ear to things. Definitely like the metal I listen to is a lot different than what I used to listen to. So this isn't a case of like I locked it in early. This is a truly genuinely the best that Pink Floyd has to offer is what I continue to go back to musically. Not only is it like comfort albums at this point in my life, it's still just really good music. The run from Dark Side to The Wall is really untouched. And I even include Final Cut in that. There are things on the Division Bell I think are really good. But yes, this week we've talked about Roger Waters. Ugh. Roger Waters is an asshole, right? Like there's a bit of a thing in his entire career. The reason Pink Floyd is not a band as formed in those glory years of high production and high value is because Roger Waters and Dave Gilmour couldn't get along. And like in 1983 already, right? In the Final Cut being released, they weren't talking. They couldn't stand each other. Really, after The Wall, things deteriorated quite significantly, which is very funny when The Wall is a song about isolation. The Wall is an album about isolation, which Roger Waters wrote after spitting on a fan when they climbed on stage during the tour for Animals. So, like, you know, he's not a good person and hasn't been for much of his career. And I think one of the things that sort of gets tossed about is like musical genius. And I would argue that's even incorrect. He's a bassist and not a very good one. Lyrical genius. There we go. And in the way that genius often is, I think it was spent within a decade because his other stuff never really attained the height of that epic 4 concept album run, which again remains and I think firmly will remain untouched. So Kendrick Lamar fans who want to talk about the generational run that Kendrick's been on are the closest, and I would argue those albums have not all been concept albums. And also are not classics in the way that the Pink Floyd albums will be classics. Kendrick Lamar fans, come at me. Uh, the so my love of Pink Floyd is long lasting. I talk about the books in my office a lot because books matter to me. I think it's a big thief line. Like, I see you as you see yourself through all the books you read. There's a part of me that, like, the books I like, the music I like, the movies I like are a reflection of how I view myself, certainly. And the things that are organized in our house that I'm in charge of are my books and my albums. I would say my movies are technically organized. They are cleanly, neatly alphabetized in those old school flip books that we have on DVDs, which I do update regularly because I'm coming back around on physical media. Go buy your shit so you own it, and don't let streamers take away all our rights. PlayStation, looking at you. Keep making physical copies of discs. What in the world is wrong with us? It's capitalism. But books and movies and these things do tend to matter. And so on the coffee table in my office, one of the books that stays on my coffee table, it doesn't get rotated out, is a coffee table book about Pink Floyd. And it's not that it's my favorite Pink Floyd book, or it's not that it's necessarily relevant which book it is. It is just a coffee table book. There's lots of information about the band, pictures from tours, etc., etc. It's a way for clients who come into my office who might recognize the band to know, if I want to talk about, critiquing the man, burn it all down, rock and roll, Jeremy gets it. Also, my other coffee table book that I often bring up is Marshall McLuhan's The Medium is the Massage, which I'll probably reference in this conversation, and a artistic rendering of Rime of the Ancient Mariner, which is a giant tattoo inspiration for me, that I have an albatross on my back. Also a Pink Floyd reference, because I love Pink Floyd, and all of my body art has to reference like 4 different things because I can't help myself. Overhead, the albatross hangs motionless upon the breeze, from Echoes by Pink Floyd. The reason we have to talk about Roger Waters, who is, again, a known asshole. He's a difficult person to maintain an interpersonal relationship with. That's his celebrity profile, right? Like, he's a known quantity forever for this reason. It's just that to go see him live in concert is still incredible. And he's a dick. These things have never been incompatible. So I'm not concerned that he's a dick. Roger Waters recently sat down with Tucker Carlson, who you might know as being the child of ice cream barons. Tucker Carlson's a Nepo baby. He was on CNN briefly before pivoting to full right-wing propaganda on Fox. He was the number one, his show was the number one viewed show in all of cable television for a long time, in which he wore stupid little bow ties and looked like he was constipated while asking basic-ass questions that he never answered, because that way it seemed like he was inquisitive and smart instead of just a big dumb idiot doing propaganda. Tucker Carlson has left Fox News. He was fired. He was a lot of the reason they got sued for $800 million in a defamation suit against Dominion voting machines. And he's been pretty unapologetic in that. He's a grifter conspiracy theorist who may or may not run for president in the future. In a long line of Republican right-wing people who are bad at policy but understand television, he would follow the likes of Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump as genuinely idiotic people who understand TV and therefore are electable because they understand how to go on TV. A lot of people think Tucker's smart, and I think from sort of the left side of things, without going like actual leftist, from a liberal perspective, uh, of the sort of political strategists, Tucker might be one of the smarter ones. But again, you're dealing with like asshats like Russ Vought and just, again, like sort of scraping the bottom of the barrel, basement dwelling intellectuals. These are not smart people. Conservatism is not a smart stance to take. So, yeah, I'm not sold on Tucker being particularly smart. I think Tucker is good at media. He's media savvy after spending a great deal of time in television, making that stupid face and wearing those shitty little bow ties didn't end his career. So obviously he's like got some skill in it, because worse people have been sunk for less. So yeah, I can say he's that. His grift, much like Candace Owens, I think, who's also a good grifter, has pivoted off of MAGA. I think, again, like rats fleeing a sinking ship, has moved away from MAGA. But Tucker has like leaned into his, I think, more natural basist fascist tendencies, in that his criticisms of Trump are rarely progressive criticisms. It's simply that Trump isn't fascist enough. And so Tucker has had people like Nick Fuentes on his show, who's an avowed neo-Nazi. And Tucker continues to platform a lot of things. Now, I think Tucker is racist, as shown by a number of quotes we could pull from Tucker and his refusal to take any of them back. The reason I think Tucker and unfortunately Roger Waters are crossing paths here is because Roger Waters has long been accused of being an anti-Semite, because Roger Waters has long spoken about Israel's occupation of Palestine, and he's been opposed to that long before October 7th, long before this iteration. Throughout his career, this has been a thing that he's been on. Sometimes when he's been one of the few celebrities speaking on it. And again, we'll get into the larger picture of what I'm talking about, in that we should not celebrate the celebrities, and we certainly shouldn't have them as our personal thought leaders. But yeah, I mean, credit where some intellectual honesty is due. Like, Roger Waters has been very consistent about this throughout his career, and I'm one of the people who, as a fan of Pink Floyd, sees this criticism pop up somewhat regularly, and just don't think he's ever been anti-Semitic in it. I think he has taken a nuanced stance, which is to say that Jewish people and the state of Israel are different things. Not all Jewish people support a Zionist agenda, and he's not opposed to people being Jewish. He's opposed to the state of Israel being an authoritarian state that is predicated on taking land from other people. And he's been very consistent in that. Tucker, being an anti-Semite, I think has paired with a lot of people who want to talk about Israel doing bad things, not because Tucker is critical of the state of Israel being fascistic, authoritarian, and committing genocide, but because Tucker wants to hate the Jews, which is the stance he's had through his entire career. He's had a number of scandals for saying a bunch of really shitty things, and again, continues to exist. So if people want to talk about cancel culture, we could certainly pull Tucker as a proof of concept that cancel culture is not a thing. And my big issue with Roger Waters going on the show is simply that Waters should know better at this point in his career. As somebody who's been outspoken and politically active in this arena, you gotta know who you're working with, who you're collaborating with. And I've seen a lot of Pink Floyd fans defend Roger Waters to say, Tucker has a huge following. Roger going on Tucker's show isn't a bad thing if it reaches some of those people. And I disagree with that stance. I do not think Tucker has a big following anymore. He's not on cable news. He doesn't have a syndicated show like that. And I think Tucker's audience is not a good one. If people are still tuning into Tucker Carlson, it's not to learn new things and be interested. Because again, I This popped up on my various feeds in different places, and seeing it on Instagram, clicking on, the comment sections. These are people who listen to Pink Floyd and like Another Brick in the Wall, but have no application to the greater understanding of what Pink Floyd's actually criticizing here. And these are the Pink Floyd fans that you don't like to run into because they're Republicans or they voted for Trump. And you're like, you can't listen to Pink Floyd talk about Maggie Thatcher and then vote for Trump. Like, that simply doesn't work. You missed the point. And so Tucker's current audience is lacking any sort of critical thinking skills and any sort of interest in nuance, where I don't think it's valid to say if you win some of these people over, that's a good get. You're not winning these people over. They're so far gone that you might as well be on InfoWars dealing with Alex Jones, which doesn't exist anymore in the sense that it was bought. And it isn't run by Alex Jones anymore, and now it's a true parody, which is kind of funny. So I don't buy it. I think Roger Waters needed to do a better due diligence to know that he was walking into an interview with an avowed anti-Semite who wants to talk about Israel does a bunch of bad things because he's anti-Semitic. He hates Jewish people and is fascist, right? Which is not being pro-Palestine and anti-genocide, actually. So deeply critical of Roger even agreeing to be on the show. And then, where we're going to get to the meat of this week's episode, they talked about 9/11 a bunch. And Roger Waters, an aged man, I forget how old he is, 70s, late 70s, is a bassist from a rock band. That's his claim to fame, right? And like, again, I would argue he's best known as a lyricist. He wrote the lyrics. David Gilmour predominantly wrote the music, and those two worked really well until they couldn't anymore, thus ended the band. If you want to tell me that Radio Chaos or Amused to Death are good albums, I can tell you which songs on those albums I think are good. I don't think they're good albums. I think Roger Waters had more good art available in his brain post Pink Floyd, but to a limited degree. I think Amused to Death was a good song in the same way that I think There's No Way Out of Here by Dave Gilmour was a good song. I think On an Island had a couple of good songs. So both Dave Gilmour and Roger Waters are good enough to keep making good art while never reaching the pinnacle of what they created together in the band Pink Floyd. Being a famed lyricist, or more literally, a famous bass player, doesn't give you any expertise in mechanical engineering, right? And like, that sounds so obvious that there shouldn't really be any pushback to that concept, but this is the thing we conflate all of the fucking time in our modern society, because in our culture of celebrity, we fall into this trap that repetition creates some sort of positive mindset. I talked about it a couple weeks ago, talking about like pro wrestling and promoting somebody, that name recognition matters. We know this in modern politics now, that like name recognition has value. If you see or hear from someone a bunch, that some voters who are not well educated and not well informed will go into the voting booth and see a name they recognize and vote for that. And that's just how some people operate, right? Like, it's the flaw of democracy, is that idiots get to vote too. See, I said I was going to have to watch my own biases on this episode. Which is not a bad thing, other than there's so much misinformation and propaganda allowed. Because again, part of what makes democracy work is having well-informed voters. And so even idiots can be well-informed. And that's not actually how America does democracy. So we have a lot of idiots voting who are purposefully misinformed, which is a problem. And then like just general corruption has really reached a fever pitch. Because bribery is not a thing anymore, according to the Supreme Court. Separate topic, staying on topic. Roger Waters, the bassist, does not understand engineering because Roger Waters, the bassist, did not study engineering. Roger Waters, the bassist, while building a wall in a concert tour and then blowing it up did happen, that was not actually ever a real building he built or blew up while performing his little songs. And again, I'm being like purposefully over the top because his little songs are the wall, which I want to step in and defend and be like, no, that's awesome. And also the wall live was very cool. And seeing Roger Waters live is still very cool. And like not somebody who built buildings, let alone giant skyscrapers, let alone do we have anybody who builds tall buildings and then test those tall buildings against planes being flown into them, because that simply isn't a thing we do. We don't build 110-story tall skyscrapers and then test them by seeing how much explosion they can handle. That's not a thing. So Roger Waters went on to the Tucker Carlson show, racist, anti-Semitic Tucker Carlson, and Roger Waters sat down to talk about 9/11 conspiracy theories, which is weird. I think there are certainly valid criticisms that exist of the United States government before September 11th, 2001, that could have served to prevent those terrorist attacks, to take the online chatter of those terrorist attacks more seriously. I do not think it was an inside job. I do not think the towers were demolitioned as a precursor to go to war in the Middle East for oil. I do think the United States government did not take terrorist threats very seriously, and then use those as a pretense to go to war. And I do think that we ratcheted up the police state that we live in following 9/11 in the name of safety. Again, I think there are valid criticisms to be had. I don't think that Nepo baby, ice cream baron, bow tie wearing Tucker Carlson and bass playing not college educated Roger Waters know what the fuck they're talking about when it comes to how hot metal beams can get before they will melt. I just simply don't think they're smart enough to have that conversation. I say that as somebody who pretty much crushed all of the schooling I went to, except for organic chemistry. And I passed OChem 1, and I took a W in OChem 2, so it wouldn't have to be on my transcript, because I probably wouldn't have passed it. And that's not true. I would have probably gotten like a C. But if you were raised the way I was raised, then C's are not passing. And they are, right? C's to get degrees. I'm a big proponent of this. OChem 2 was really hard, and there's a level of smartness, there's a level of knowledge and intellect that people who finish those classes and go on to study some of the sciences more intensely at that level have that I did not have. My brain is very good at processing information very quickly, and my brain is very good at connecting a lot of pieces that don't seem connected at first. So something like psychology works really well for my brain. Pattern recognition, a crazy breadth of knowledge without needing to get super deep into it. I have a cousin who did his PhD at University of Minnesota, which is where I was doing my undergrad, and we overlapped for like a year or something. I saw him at the Dairy Queen off of campus one time. He very smart, right? Like the things he was working on with his PhD, I could not comprehend as like somebody who was a couple years behind him in school and wasn't specialized in what he was specializing in. The idea of things like quantum physics are a thing that we read about because the Marvel universe is introducing them, and 99% of the population can't actually fathom those things, right? And again, you're like, 99%, Jared, that sounds pretty high, right? Like less than half of people have college degrees. like the intellectual dishonesty that has become so present in the United States to suggest that, like, again, experts are not actually experts is a long drawn out process to get to the idea where, like, Mark Wayne Mullen, Mark Wayne Mullen, there's almost no way to pronounce his name that doesn't veer into like Oklahoma uh hillbilly accent where like this is not a smart person. And there's probably a Mark Wayne out there who has risen above his family status and did go on to school and excel and does something really smart. But it's not this guy who's currently, I don't know, director of Homeland Security or something. I don't even remember what he's in charge of. He's a fucking moron. Because fascism thrives under loyalist conditions and hates intelligence, hates actual intelligence, right? These are small men who are afraid of being made to feel stupid. And the fact that other people are smarter than them makes them feel small, right? I can talk about my cousin being super smart. I can talk about all these people being super smart because I don't mind acknowledging that other people are a lot smarter than me. Because, like, I'm an idiot. I'm really smart in a lot of different ways that people are not. And also, there's so many more ways that I'm not smart, right? And it's not like book smart or street smart. I have actual years and years and years worth of study and practice on things that have made me quite good at them, right? I can't play the bass. So the fact that Roger Waters, while he might not be a particularly good bassist, can play the bass is a form of knowledge that he has that I do not, right? I don't know what it's like to grow up rich. That's a form of knowledge Tucker Carlson has. I've never been rich. Also a form of knowledge Tucker Carlson has that I do not, right? But these are not necessarily forms of intelligence that I find particularly meaningful. Playing the bass, more so. But I want you for just a second, dear listener, just a second to join me in a thought experiment and think of a person in your life who you know that plays the bass guitar. Right? And like just holding that person in your mind for a sec. Maybe there's a couple bassists, maybe you've dated a bass player at some point in your life and wonder, is that somebody who I respect all of their opinions? Because again, the bass players that I know are predominantly from my time in college, and a number of them have gone on to be college graduates and not play professional music and not be particularly smart in what they're doing. One of them went on to law school and, as far as I know, is a lawyer and I think an intelligent person. They hiked the Appalachian Trail by themselves, which seems like a cool thing. I don't know what that has to do with intelligence, but like some degree of survival, right? That's cool. I assume there's the number of functional knowledge bases that you have to draw from to be able to do that. And that's cool. So when I think confronted with, like, I want to say actual smart people, when actual smart people get around other smart people, it's enriching, it's enlivening, it's in zero ways threatening, because we cannot be experts in all things. And like, this is just a known presupposition. I don't like to start with like arguments where I'm presupposing something. The idea that we can't know all things is up there. The human brain can't even problem solve multiple things at a time, one thing at a time. Our brain has an order of operations. The idea that we could not only know all things, but also excel to a level of expertise in all things is just simply preposterous. Which gets us to, oh no, my favorite celebrity might be a dummy. The things that most celebrities excel in are not being smart. I was going to say are not being well informed. But again, I think to be a high level athlete, you have to be really well informed on a number of things. Just do a bunch of film studies. You have to know your playbook. Sometimes when we watch baseball, you'll see a pitcher pull out a little card from their back thing, which has the scouting report on the hitters they're going to face. Like there's a high degree of intelligence there, right? Some of these people are naturally gifted, and some of these people are naturally gifted and do a shit ton of work to take their natural talents and excel even more. I think Kobe Bryant, as somebody who was like a workaholic with crazy work ethic, could, take something like Phil Jackson's philosophy of the triangle offense and run it to a degree and a point where my brain can't fathom that. And I'm somebody who played Division I college sports, right? When you see people who are actually and interact with people who are actually the pinnacle of their field, it is insanely impressive. And Kobe Bryant was also a sex pest. So, what are we supposed to do with all that? Which is gets back to the idea of we shouldn't worship celebrities, and celebrities are not thought leaders, right? Your local sports athlete knows their local sport really well. And that's the only expertise that we can ascribe to that person. This person made it to the highest professional level of their sport. They probably know that sport really, really well in a way that only other people who do that sport at that level could comprehend. That's an exclusive class. Absolutely. I agree with that. And that's not a particularly useful base of knowledge unless you're doing that sport. There's not a lot of career changes that professional athletes get to make that don't involve their sport. They're either media analysts or they're coaches, or they just retire and live off of all the money they made while they were doing their sport at a really high level. Right? That's it. If you're a professional musician, I don't expect you to have a ton of knowledge on geopolitics. You can pluck your strings or you can sing really good notes, and that takes a special form of knowledge to be able to do that at the highest level of professionalism. Certainly. The other influence of me wanting to do this episode, because my celebrities have been striking out lately, is Darren Malakian of not Pink Floyd, System of a Down fame, also a top 5 band for me. The drummer's been outright MAGA since 2016. So, that one's tough. But again, I think when we generally summarize who do we think of as drummers, not smart people. And again, that's so insulting because to keep a beat or to do multi-poly rhythms on beat in front of a stadium of people and do that with great degree of consistency, I think is really impressive. And every drummer I know dropped out of high school, let alone didn't complete college. And that's not to take away from their drumming skills or their artistry or their creative mind or their inherent worth as a human being who deserves love and safety. That's just to suggest that as we get into more complex topics, I don't think they'll have good takes. I think they'll start tapping away at their fingers as I try to explain something like systems theory. Right? I'm just in my own head, contradicting myself, be but I could explain it to them in a way that holds their attention, because that's one of the knowledge bases that I have, taking really complex things and simplifying them to people who are not needing to know it at the level that I know it. Which is a form of knowledge, right? Which is cool. It's cool that we have different forms of knowledge, and we have to hold some awareness around the fact that to know to a very, very, very high degree, a quote unquote expert level degree, is incredibly limiting. There are people who design cars to be fuel efficient, and those people have to be insanely smart. The mechanic at your local Jiffy Lube isn't that smart. And the mechanic at your local Jiffy Lube knows so many different things about so many different cars that they can consistently, day in and day out, work on a plethora of cars, makes, models, years, in a way that is highly functional. That's super helpful to people. Again, that's great. And we should pay that person a living wage for sure. And then some. I'm not a car guy. I don't understand a lot of the car stuff. I don't know what all the things do. One of my regrets in life is that I didn't take small motors and engines in high school, because that was a class we had, and I didn't take it because it didn't fit as my father, who is also a guidance counselor directed me towards staying on my academic path, which is fine, right? I graduated college in 3 years, saved a lot of money. And I don't know how engines work. I can't do regular maintenance on my own little lawnmower. I know enough about cars to change my oil, and I could change my brakes if I need to, but I prefer to pay someone else to do that. I'm not a car guy. There's a certain level of knowledge there. Again, pattern recognition and knowledge base around that is necessary to do that professionally. Again, I think that is respectable, and also a small unit of knowledge. And I don't mean small in like a judgmental or comparative way. Like in the pantheon of all knowledge ever, that's a very small amount of knowledge you have. I understand how to change the oil in cars that were made from 2000 to 2026. In the history of all knowledge, it's very small. So is modern psychology. So is psychotherapy, right? So my point that I've rambled to make is that we as humans can only occupy very small, limited amounts of knowledge at any given time. To be an expert in a field takes a lot. To be an expert in multiple fields takes a lot, which is why there are very few people who are like doctors and lawyers and astronauts. And when we find those people, we let them run the space mission because, like, gosh, they're really fucking smart. And most people aren't that. Most people don't even have a knowledge base that like cracks top 10% of their chosen field. Again, your local mechanic at Jiffy Lube is great at being a mechanic and also isn't designing cars because they aren't at that level in their field of car knowledge. Dudes who collect cars, or ladies, or whomever, people. I just drove past a like hot rod show the other day. I don't know how to describe it. I'm not a car person. It was not classic cars. It was cars they did shit to make them look cool and have big engines on the outside, which I would describe as a hot rod car show. They probably know a lot about those cars, and that's not somebody who I would necessarily assume I want to change the oil on my 2010 Scion. Right? They might know a lot about cars. They might know a lot about specific engines and specific what chrome does, right? Or whatever. I don't know. Maybe they only understand what flame decals to put on cars look good, because again, that's a type of knowledge too. It's not one that I think is particularly important, but if you're doing hot rod shows, you might, and that's fine. I don't think interior decorating feels all that important. And again, those people have useful careers and make a lot of money. It's great. It's great that different people have different types of knowledge. Conservative propagandists and bass players don't have a base of knowledge to know mechanical engineering. Don't have a base of knowledge to know what government did or didn't do in 2001, 25 years ago. Now, Tucker Carlson does have a knowledge base to know this is great propaganda that definitely fits into his whole shtick, which has been devoid of any sort of evidence and is veers conspiratorial all of the time. So having a big name celebrity come on and talk about a conspiracy theory, again, I don't know, is conspiracy theories a knowledge base? I think by the way that I've sort of defined knowledge base as usable knowledge, then yes, again, like the ability to manipulate people. To be a grifter is a certain knowledge base. Again, it's not one that I think highly of, and it is one that I think we should be critical of, right? You could be helping people donate their organs, right? You want to be like somebody who can shift public perception on things. Let's get the boomers signing up for organ donation, because whatever PR scare campaign ran in the 60s has kept a lot of them from being organ donors, right? He could be using his powers for good. He's not. He's using it for personal enrichment. So I don't know. I don't think that's good. And I think Roger Waters, again, is not somebody who, even being a fan of his work for most of his career, was ever somebody who was like, ooh, I would Roger Waters' opinion, let me hear it. By and large, it has been preferred to ignore his opinions because they've mostly been petty, snarky things he said about his former bandmates or former wives. Because again, he's somebody who being in an interpersonal relationship with seems hard. And he toured with Lucius, and I like Lucius. So again, like maybe he's got some redeeming qualities. People, turns out, are not monolithic. I do feel confident in saying not an expert on that. Not an expert on 9/11. And as he increases in age, as we all will, this will come to me someday too. I expect his brain capacity to deteriorate as his brain literally deteriorates, and he'll become more prone and more likely to fall for conspiracy theories. So whatever sharpness and on top of it he used to have, gosh, I'll just be ageist here and say I would doubt it as his numerical age continues to climb. Death comes to us all. All of our brains are going to deteriorate. All of our mental capacities and functionings will deteriorate. Mine's deteriorating right now because I had to watch Tucker Carlson clips. No, literally, though, it is deteriorating. Our brains are done growing past a certain point, 26-ish for most of us. And then we start a slow decline. So literally, millennials tuning in. Hey, hi, do your back and hip stretches, please. Also, work on your brain plasticity because your brain is deteriorating right now. Slowly, but still. So yeah, I mean, I don't know whether it's a local celebrity saying God helped them win the game, or sports ball doing sports ball things, or it's bassists talking about politics, or it's, I don't know, Kim Kardashian, a celebrity whose only claim to fame is, I think, being a celebrity. Whatever she does, I don't know. Divorces Kanye and sells makeup or lip filler, or I don't know. I don't know what she does. Again, this is a hard episode for me because I don't actually follow celebrities. But yeah, they might be good at a thing. Let them be good at the thing. I liked Aaron Rodgers talking about football, not COVID vaccines. I like Michael Jordan playing basketball, and Michael Jordan owning a team went horribly wrong. Again, even I think within the same field, that area of expertise is limited, right? It's not that we can know all things in a given field. It's usually like we have a particular skill set, and if our knowledge base backs that skill set up, we can get really good at a thing. Exceptionally small numbers of people can get good at a number of things. Most of us are going to have functional knowledge on a lot of things. We can cook, not good enough to open our own restaurant, right? So I think a lot of us would be happier people not following our celebrities' every take. I don't think we need to ask celebrities a lot of the questions they get asked. This isn't bury your head in the sand and don't hold people accountable, because again, I think we should hold people accountable for having shitty opinions. I'm all for bringing back public shaming. But yeah, I mean, this is a structural issue, not an individual one. To be critical of an individual celebrity does not get at the point that, like, we don't need to be having conversations about geopolitics with people who are not well informed on that. I don't even think, like, we don't even have the, I don't think modern journalism really gets good at asking good questions. I don't know if you've tried to follow any journalists lately. Even independent journalists, again, are like woeful on minding their own cognitive biases. And again, that's the thing that I say regularly, we all fail at, even myself included, who talks about it somewhat regularly. I'm not saying you can avoid it. I'm just saying, like, there are people who are actively working against it, and there are people who are not. So again, to find someone who is an expert and has lived experience, has education, and has the skill set to do their thing really well, like, great, pay attention to that person in that thing. That's it. But the mechanism and why I said earlier, like I'd probably bring Marshall McLuhan up, because again, like we see all of these things. Authenticity has been repackaged into, not just is it filmed reality TV, but now we get to see them on Instagram Live, we get to see them on TikTok, we get to see them have their takes and their opinions on every topic ever. And like, that is a waste of our time. Go read a book by an actual historian. Don't listen to what Roger Waters has to say. Go read a book by an actual historian while listening to Pink Floyd, if that's your jam. We don't need uninformed opinions on these things. It only serves to fill our own biases, in that we say, oh, I like this person in this movie or in this show or in this song or on this team, and they said a thing that I agree with, so I like them more. That's just confirmation bias. And then we're disappointed and we're bummed out when somebody who's not us says something that we don't agree with. It's not coalition building. It veers towards purity testing, but also like, yeah, these people are not well informed on these things. Find people who like are well informed and learn and grow and have them in community, but it's okay to have them in part of your community and not other parts. I have sports friends and I have board game friends, and one of those overlaps, and generally they do not. I have therapy friends who are neither sport friends nor board game friends. I have nature friends who are hippies and like to be out in the woods and throw disc golfs into baskets. It's okay to have community that don't all do the same thing. Don't hang out with Nazis. Again, it's great to have standards in your coalition building and your community building, but like, yeah, celebrities aren't that. They're not part of your community. You are exposed to them because your attention has been commoditized. And so the clicks and the views and the watches become part of a commodity that is different than community. So not only should we not put celebrities on pedestals, we do not want celebrities to be thought leaders. Literally anything. Ugh. What a dumb timeline to be alive for. And also, what a great time to have lived through. Pepsi Blue and Dunkaroos, am I right? It's just a Glass Animals lyric, but Dunkaroos were fine, not great, and I really didn't like Pepsi Blue, but I know people who did. Stop worshiping celebrities. Read books written by people who are actually really knowledgeable in the thing that they're writing about. Listen to podcasts if you must. That's a whole commoditized thing too. I'm not even going to get into that because that's the medium that I'm operating on right now. I don't make any money on it. So, you know, there's your material analysis in a nutshell. Let's see what's coming up. I have one more solo episode, and then we'll have some guests, which are cool. An episode about cults coming up, and an episode about community building coming up with a surprise special guest. That'll be cool. Lots of therapists lined up over the next couple of months to be guests. So we'll do a bit of this and a bit of that. It'll be fun. Over on YouTube, unless you're already on YouTube, on my non-podcast, I'm doing a little bit of an episodic series on divorced dad rock and how that created space for what is now the current manosphere to exist. And is one of the more connected things I've probably ever recorded over on my YouTube channel, which is a lot of fun. I just saw the Odyssey, so I'll have a review of that as well. Yeah, that's what's going on in my world. The Religious Trauma Survivor Retreat is coming up. You can still donate to that if you would like to. Link in the show notes or on my website, which is cool. I've gotten a lot of donations, a lot of funding for that, but I will leave funding open for it. A couple people are able to attend on full scholarship. Everybody has partial scholarship. And so if you'd like to donate, support survivors directly, head over to the website. In the meantime, take care of yourself, take care of somebody else. We'll be back next week with another new episode. Peace.